Hi and welcome back. Well, this is a bit of a different video today. This is a 2005 Subaru Legacy. It belongs to my son's girlfriend, and she was having some issues with it. The backstory is it was getting less and less power as she was driving it, and in the end she had to pull over and leave it on the side of the road after work one time. Me and my son went down and picked it up that night. I started it up and it worked fine. I did a U-turn to head home, and about 400 meters down the road I ran into the same issue where lack of power. In fact, I had to pull over and stop. I eventually crawled all the way home, and it's lucky we did this at night so the traffic was very light. We took it to a mechanic just down the road from us, and he had a look at it and he said, look, you need a new set of spark plugs and some spark plug leads. He said he could do the job for $900. Now the kids here don't have a lot of money, so I said to them, look, I'll do your spark plug leads and your spark plugs, and that will save you some money. So I bought the parts for under $200. And as you can see here, the new spark plug leads have been fitted, and of course I put in new spark plugs as well. Yesterday I started it up and I went for a drive, and I got down the road about 400 meters, and guess what? Same issue. Again, crawled home, and I couldn't get it up our driveway because it's quite steep. So we actually had to tow it up with the other car to get it up around the back by the garage or the workshop. Now the new spark plugs and leads did stop the missing because it was missing quite bad, and the mechanic did say that one of the leads was faulty. I also measured the lead with the multimeter, and as I wiggled it round it was working and then open circuit, so something definitely wrong with one of the leads. But the lack of power issue is still there, and I have an idea what it is. So in this video we're going to try and diagnose and hopefully fix the issue. I think the issue is a plugged exhaust or a partially restricted exhaust. And this can happen when your catalytic converter gets clogged up or fails completely and disintegrates inside. The bits of the converter can block up the pipe, or they can travel downstream to your second catalytic converter and block down there. If it's the second catalytic converter that's failed, then bits could actually end up in your muffler. So there's a few things to check. So that's what I think is causing the issue, but we need to check that. And I'm going to do that with this pressure and vacuum gauge. This is a nicely made in US gauge. I inherited it from my father, so it's beneficial that he was buying nice tools. Anyway, we're going to plug this onto the intake manifold, and I found an area here where I can pull a pipe off, and then we can plug our pressure vacuum gauge onto there. Alright, I have the hose connected, and we are looking at the inches of mercury scale around the outside here. It goes up to 30. In the good range is between 18 and 22. That's where we want to be. Rev it up. Well, I'm quite surprised with that. I've seen a few videos on YouTube and they've always been around 13, 14, 15. I've never seen one around 5 or 6. So that's pretty conclusive. There's some issue there. So I want to confirm with a second test. I want to take out this oxygen sensor here just before the catalytic converter. And I want to make an adapter to fit in there so that I can plug in my vacuum pressure gauge. It's a bit hard to see on the camera, but I'm using a special tool to take this oxygen sensor out. That's the oxygen sensor. I need to make something very similar with the same thread, and where my hand is, it needs a sort of a nipple there and a hole all the way through. So let's quickly make that up now. I have screwed that part in by hand and just using a spanner to tighten that up. You can see here I have the hose connected. This time we're looking at the scale on the outside for PSI and it goes up to 10. And on a good engine it would be less than 3 and mostly these would run at around 1 PSI. Starter up. Okay, turn her off. I've got to say, that's pretty crazy. I've seen some videos on YouTube where it goes 4 or 5, but this just pretty much went off the scale. So we definitely got very high exhaust pressure there. I'm going to do one more test, and this is to hit the last nail in the coffin to confirm that we have a high pressure issue. I've taken out the front oxygen sensor here. The idea is that the gases will escape out of this hole and the engine should run a lot better than what it's been running. In the last vacuum test we had a range between 5 and 6 and I'm expecting a lot more than that this time, so maybe up to 12 or 13. Alright, start her up. You can hear straight away that the engine's running a lot better. Give it a rev. And we can see that we've got around about 14 inches of mercury here. So that really does confirm the issue that we have. I'm under the car and doing this freehand. This is the first catalytic converter and the sensor is just behind there. Now the pipe comes down to the second catalytic converter and you can see the second sensor is there as well. The pipe continues down to a muffler that you can see, and it actually goes a bit further down to a secondary muffler. So it's quite a long path here, but we need to work out where the blockage is. Now we know we have high pressure up here before the first catalytic converter. So what I'm going to do is come down the pipe a bit and drill a hole around here somewhere. And then that's going to tell me if there's pressure in the pipe at this point. If there is pressure in the pipe, the second catalytic converter could be blocked and we'll drill a hole behind that to check. If that still shows high pressure, then one of those mufflers or maybe both of them are blocked at the back. I center punch and drill a hole in the pipe here. And interesting, there's some water coming out of that. I've made this piece here that goes onto my pressure gauge. Alright, start her up. Okay, turn her off. So you can see there we're running at about 1 PSI and to my mind that's a clear exhaust. So the issue is obviously before this point here. So it's up in that first cat converter. Well, that is what I thought until I took the pipe off and you'll see what I mean. We've taken the section of pipe off that has the 2 converters and you can see this is the oxygen sensor hole for the second converter and there's a whole bunch of debris in there. I'm using an endoscope here to go in and have a look at that. Also use the endoscope to go into the first catalytic converter and what we find in here is nothing. All the catalyst is gone and that is the pipe going out of that first catalytic converter. I bang this on the ground and we have a lot of stuff coming out the second catalytic converter. So it looks like something's wrong there. Let's go online and have a look how much a new one is. Well, when I saw this, I fell off the chair. Now, this was a .com site, and I presumed it was a US site, but I think this is probably another country that has different currency, because I found another one from a US site, and it's $2,073. In New Zealand terms, that's $3,468. So almost as much as what the car costs. In that case, I think we need to go to plan B. Plan B is to cut rectangles out of both the catalytic converters and to have a look what's inside there. So they're cut out with an angle grinder. This is the front cat. As you can see, it's absolutely empty. That hole there is the outlet pipe that goes to the next cat. We open up the second cat. This one is a bit different. All the catalyst is still in there, and I start breaking that away. Now, I don't know how dangerous this stuff is, but I'm wearing a respirator here. Interestingly, I find this in the pipe. There's two pieces of fabric stuff. You can see here the second cat has been all cleared out and all that material is on the floor of my garage. Remember that hole I drilled in the pipe? Well, I think that was drilled in the wrong place. And I think we had a bit of a build up from this point here. And it's driven all the way up. And that's why we're getting a low reading. Now these are two pieces that held in the catalyst material in the second cat. But I did find these pieces and they were up in the pipe here. So I think what's happened here is that the first cat has disintegrated and all the bits have travelled down the pipe here and they've hit the second cat and they've all built up in the pipe here before the second cat. And so that hole that I drilled in there was basically in a blocked area and that's why we were not getting any pressure. Now that we're cleaned out, the next step is to weld these bits back in. If you're interested, this is what they call the honeycomb. It's not really honeycomb, it's just squares, and the gases go through here and they react with the metal and they clean the exhaust, and that's how the catalytic converter works. I've turned the lights off so that we can see the little speckles in here. So the second cat seemed to be pretty good and open, but I think it was just being completely blocked by all the debris from the first cat. Before I weld those panels back on, I've got this springy throttle cable from a lawnmower and I'm poking it down the pipe because I want to make sure there's no debris down there. The first thing I do is weld up this hole because I know if I forget it, then we're going to have a problem. This is the front cat and I'm using magnets here. The welder is a little bit hot, starts to burn some holes, so I adjust it a little bit and it seems to work a little bit better. I finished weld that off camera, but man, I'm not going to show you what that welding looks like. This is the second one, so it's slightly bigger, put some more magnets on, and I have the welder set up a lot better here. Now I'm less embarrassed to show you this welding. This is a lot better than the first one. I've installed the pipe back on the car with a new front gasket and we're ready to give it a go. I've got the vacuum gauge back on and I'm expecting a better reading than 5 or 6. Okay, start her up. Rev. You can see here we sort of get up to around about 14 inches of mercury. It's not on the green range, so there could be still an issue unrelated to the exhaust, but it's definitely running a lot better than what it was. Okay, shut down. Well, it's a new day, and yesterday we fixed a very sick cat under the hood of this car. No, not that cat. Anyway, just finishing off here, I've put the airbox in and that's been tightened down. Then of course the electrical cable needs to be plugged in. There's a little link hose here and those hose clips are tightened up as well. And a little plastic panel here on the front. Then we took it for a test drive. And well, man, I tell you, this thing has got a heap of power. No, that's not me. That was just a clip off YouTube. But we did take it for a test drive and it has got power back to normal, so it's running pretty good. Now there's a couple of things to point out. In New Zealand, if your car is first registered on or after May the 1st, 2010, then you're not allowed to remove your catalytic converter. So if it fails, you have to put a new one in. This car is 2005, so we have no issues with hogging out the center of that catalytic converter. But if you're going to do this, make sure you check with your local laws to make sure that you're not doing something illegal. The second thing is we still had a bit of low pressure in the intake manifold, and we had a little wobble on the needle as well. Now that's not related to the blocked exhaust, that is something else, and that's something I'm going to have to deal with later on. And finally, because I have hogged out the catalytic converters and there's nothing in them anymore, I may get the engine check light coming on. And that's typically because the second or rear oxygen sensor is getting different readings than what it expects. Normally the catalytic converter changes the exhaust and then the oxygen sensor is expecting it to be different at the other end. Well, now we don't have any catalyst in them. That oxygen sensor is going to sense exactly what the first oxygen sensor is going to sense. That can bring on that engine check light and bring up a P0420 error code on our scan tool. If that does happen, then there are some things you can do to trick that rear oxygen sensor into thinking that everything is okay. And that will, in most cases, keep the check engine light turned off. Anyway, I'm happy that I got this vehicle running. I think my son's girlfriend will be pretty happy. And just so you know, no real cats were harmed in the making of this video. Thanks for watching.